I'm not sure if Lo-Fi Girls Team Astro is a collective or an individual, but they have 1 million monthly listeners and a new EP out. I want to show you how to create that nostalgic, emotional feel of their music. Let's dive into it. So shout out to NZ for bringing this one to my attention. Absolutely gorgeous vibes, and we're going to start things off with the piano. When I heard the last track, Final Destination, in the Team Astro EP, it reminded me of the final track of the Babel soundtrack, just pitched up 2 semitones. If you listen to Bebo no Azura, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, the repeating note is E, and in Team Astro's song, the repeating note is just 2 semitones up with the F sharp. I'm going to start this inspired by Episode off in the same key as the Babel track. So this is what I came up with first. It's a really lovely repeating line, and I've just added that higher E above the chords, almost playing like a swung, lazy repeating pattern. To process the piano, all that I've done on each track is just add a little bit of EQ8, rolling off the lows, because we're going to have a lot of other accompanying instruments. And on the piano group, I'm using both Lifeline Console and Lifeline Expanse. Lifeline Expanse is just giving me a little bit of drive, and that's it. And then Lifeline Console is kind of just brightening up my piano and giving it a little bit of compression. The next thing that I did after this was use our Ample Sound semi-hollow guitar. You've seen this on the channel a lot, can't get enough of this. But this time around, I'm using it in keyboard mode with stroke noise on, and it gives it more of a strummed sound than it sounding like a lead guitar. And these are the chords that I have for the guitar. You can see that I had a little bit of trouble down here. It's really important that if you're using a guitar VST, that you make sure that you roll those notes and play with the velocities as well. You want to make sure that it does sound like a real guitar. So those higher notes are going to come very quickly after the first downbeat, which is normally going to be a little bit louder. The Ample Sound guitar, just rolling off some of the lower notes with the EQ8 and just ducking a little bit of the muddy frequencies. You might have seen my short from earlier this week. Make sure that you're ruling out any of those kind of 200 to 500 hertz frequencies to make sure you leave space for those instruments that really need those frequencies. And then a line delay to make sure that it's sitting a little bit wider than my piano. I've got 2 similar instruments here, just using this Lo-Fi toy patch, which is essentially a sine pluck in Serum with a little bit of reverb to just double up on the piano chords. Let's play that with the piano. That last note has an extra little bit of reverb coming from Serum's reverb there, just to make sure that it kind of blurs out into the distance. And one of the sounds in Team Astro's track was this kind of fluty sound. Mine isn't as present because, as you know, this is inspired by, this isn't copy like for like tracks. So I've gone for something that's a little bit more distant with less attack. This is my flute sound panning from left to right. And I'm doing a couple of things here. I'm obviously automating the lows out. I'm also decreasing the Valhalla mix, or the reverb mix if you don't have Valhalla. And I'm adding a little bit of shaper box. This is a little bit lazy on my part. I just wanted to duck some of the transients of the flute. It was quite breathy. And then with the shaper box, you can get around this by just adding a little bit of attack to your flute, but I wanted to add a real quick fix. On that note, Black Friday coming up, I'm sure cable guys will have a discount. Let me know in the comments what you're looking out for this Black Friday as well. And then a little bit of phaser coming in with the dry wet on the last 2 beats of the bar. I'm also using Ableton's own electric bass open. You can find this in packs if you haven't downloaded it with your copy of Ableton already. The only thing we're doing with the bass, we're rolling off the higher frequencies with the EQ8 there, putting the bass in mono, and then just side chaining the bass to the kick drum. Anytime the kick drum plays, the bass will be ducked by about half. So these are all my melodic elements before we get to any pads or percussion. So now we get to this lilac region, which is going to be all my kind of pad instruments. So I'm starting things off in a really cold timbre and starting with these kind of icy pads, just 2 notes at the start and 3 notes later on. There's going to be a lot of automation in this track because I want things to kind of sweep through each other. So we're rolling down to the lower frequencies with the EQ8 here, and we're leaving the rest of the atmosphere to the Valhalla reverb, or just a Hall reverb if you don't have this plugin. That's set to 60%. Very quiet in the mix, just kind of a backup roll. I noticed in Team Astro's work that there's a lot of sounds being reversed, manipulated, you know, kind of grain delayed and granulated. So I wanted to have a little go at that as well. What I set up was just an operator plucked instrument. You can see that I rolled off the attack a little bit there. And surprise, surprise, we got a little bit of EQ automation here. And then the Valhalla vintage verb is taking over at 100%. But the real magic is the arpeggiator. I've set the style to random other. It means that every other note is going to be completely random. This can give a lot of variety, so what I did was set up a new track that was set to resample and then just played that over and over again until I found a pattern that I liked. I fade that pattern in and fade that pattern out, and then just added a little bit of OTT and a line delay so it was a little bit wider, and we were left with this. This plays with the pad that's underneath, which is just something I got from Splice, kind of like a vocal pad texture, rolling off those lows again, and then the Valhalla vintage verb. These couple each other really well. Now the reason that there's so much automation of high passing, low passing, and increasing the wet of reverbs is that I'm kind of applying my pads and instruments the way that string players would perform in an orchestra. Not everybody's at the same dynamic. People bow into a chord as other members of the orchestra bow out of a chord. And that's what I want to do with my pads. My final instrument that I've put into the pads category is a collection of forward playing and reversed slide guitar, which I got from Outputs Arcade. You might actually recognize this sample from my Purple Cat video. So this first chop here is reversed. It's actually the last note of the entire sample, which is actually pretty long. And then this long note is played forward, going into a reverse note, going into a forward note again. And you can see that again, I'm rolling down that EQ on the low notes and taking out some of the harmonics that I didn't like, Valhalla vintage verb. And then I'm just sidechaining it to the kick because this is quite a thick layer. It's taking up quite a lot of space in the spectrum. So I just want to duck that from time to time. These are all of my melodic elements together. Okay, so now we're on to the super tasteful and almost toy-like drums, but very quickly I want to tell you a quick message from our sponsor. What's up gang, let me interrupt my own video real quickly to tell you about DistroKid. I love DistroKid. If you've been a long time supporter of the show, you already know this, but to the newcomers, they make it so easy to get your music on over 200 platforms. I use this thing called Hyperfollow to promote all of my music. When there's an upcoming release, I stick it in my Instagram bio, TikTok, wherever else, Linktree, and then that way your audience can click that, pre-save your music, and then they'll be the first ones to hear it when it comes out. DistroKid. If you're not already a member, use the link in the description below. You'll get 7% off your first year. Let's get back to it. Okay, so the drums, they're super cute in Team Astro's track. I started things off with this rim shot and then just pitched it up 3 semitones. I've combined that with this snare sound, which I've also pitched up, but warped the beat, set it to transients, the forward envelope mode, and brought that envelope all the way down. Now it's just like a little click, and they're going to layer up together nicely along with this breath of noise, which is from an overtone of a snare drum. And I've just faded that sample in a little bit, no pitching, no warping the beats of that. So those 3 snares sound like this. And we're combining it with a very clean kick drum, just rolling off a little bit of noise. Next, I've got this lovely hat loop that I got from my buddy Towers. I haven't done anything with this hi-hat other than roll off some of the lows and turn the gain way down. There's a couple of things that are really interesting about the drums. The first one is almost this like dub reggae pattern with the snare. All you want to do is find an acoustic snare drum sample of a roll or a drag. Put the dry drag sound on one track, and then put the accented downbeat of that snare on another track with some reverb and delay. I'm using Valhalla Vintage Verb and Valhalla Supermassive to get that dotted dub effect. That drifts over the bar line really nicely and really solidifies that loop. The final sounds that I combined in this track to kind of bring that Team Astro sound to life was just the sound of glasses clinking together. I pitched these sounds around a little bit, faded them in, chopped them up, and made sure that they landed on the snare lines. I kept them super quiet in the mix and just sent them to this return that has reverb on it and EQ8 just to kind of constrict some of those frequencies. We'll play those sounds together. It just adds a little bit of depth and brings a more human feel to your track. And the same goes for these dry glass clinks as well. Finally, you want that classic lo-fi rain sample or vinyl crackle. I've made sure to really constrict the frequencies with the EQ here because you don't want all of that white noise taking up the whole frequency band. So be specific with the noise that you want in the track and then align delay to make sure it's really out of the way of our kicks, snares, basses, and main melodies. Let's have a recap, put everything together. That's all we have time for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video, and please do keep your suggestions coming in the comments below. We can focus on lo-fi and chill hop, or we can drift off into other genres. I've been really enjoying diving back into the hip hop world and the electronic content after a brief hiatus. So thank you once again, and I'll see you next time.